Hello everyone, welcome to Dragon's Horde. My name is Rebecca and today we are going over one of my favorite enemies to lovers fantasy romance books from 2025. I actually read this before Blood of Hercules, but I am a chaos goblin and do things chaotically. So today we are doing things a little bit differently. If you can tell, instead of the typical microphone sword, today we have our reflex hammer. Now, I do know the title for this book is a mouthful, but I promise you it is 1000% worth it. So let's get into it. As usual, we will start out with our cover review and then we'll just go into all the juicy bits following that. And today I have a surprise for you guys. Today I actually have a physical copy of the book and I'm so excited. Look at it. It's beautiful. Look at all the details. I know my fingers are in the way. I'll try to move them. Alright, so The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Bridget Knight. This book, the cover itself is a work of art. I love it. I love all of the teeny tiny details. As you can see, I do have the base version of it. I don't have the fancy schmancy special edition, but I have to say I do prefer this cover over the special edition. So if we do go and compare both covers, we can see that one of them is much brighter, much lighter in coloration, while this one has a darker aspect to it. This makes it feel more ominous, more brooding, and I do understand, after reading it, I do understand why they would create both versions of the book in this way, but I do prefer this version. That is just personal preference. And I just believe it's much more detailed. It has a lot more symbolism included on the cover. I went back after I wrote this. Now, usually for cover reviews, I don't write them after I read the book, but for this book I did, just because I jumped into it and didn't start with the cover review like I usually do. But I'm kind of glad I didn't, because it was so nice that every time I would find something of the symbolism that is on this cover, that I would go and look at the cover, because of course I took the dust jacket off while I was reading. That's why it still looks decent. So one of the most noticeable things about this cover is the use of colors and their contrasting nature. And mainly that's with the black and pink, but also the white is what gives the biggest contrast. Everything flows wonderfully together. I love the cohesion, I love the color scheme, I love how everything complements each other. I also love how the supporting illustrations are done parallel to each other, one on each side. That is nice to see, even if they are different. Like we can see at the top, we have a knight's helm and the moon. Even though they're different, they do complement each other. And then we can see as we move down, oh, my fingers are in the way. They're different, but they are still pairs. And I believe it's that asymmetrical look of these pairs that just gives so much intrigue to the cover itself. It's very unique because usually our book covers, their focal point is the main illustration in the middle, and then of course the title, the lettering, but everything is typically pretty symmetrical, or it just has its focal point and doesn't worry about what's going on the border. And I especially love the detail that was put into their costume design, especially Osric's. That is our MMC. His costume design is phenomenal, and Faram's, or Alreen, it switches between what she's called throughout the book. Her costume design is much simpler, but I do understand because of her profession it makes sense as a healer. The only thing that bothers me about Alreen's costume is why white? Why is it always all white? Let me explain to you. Like, she is a healer, and I know she uses magic to help heal people, but putting someone in all white while they are around people that are sick, there are bodily fluids and bleeding everywhere, and you're in all white. I understand this because I spent 6 years wearing nothing but white. White shoes, white socks, white pants, white blouse, and towards the end, white lab coat. So take everyday life and then turn it up a notch and try to keep the white clean throughout the day, and it is like turning life on the hard setting. Especially if you drink coffee or eat anything with any kind of sauce, you run the risk of getting some little bitty splash somewhere, but it is noticeable. And then of course if it rains, well, I hope you don't have to go outside, because everything that's on the ground is going to splash up onto your pants leg or your dress or whatever you're wearing. So that's going to suck. It's going to look like you trudged through filth. Sleeve cuffs, absolute nightmare. You should roll them up. If you can't tell, wearing all white leaves one traumatized. But let's get back to this cover. Love, love, love this cover. If I could, I would give it 1,000,000 stars. However, since we only go to 5 stars in our reviews and our ratings, I will, of course, give it 5 out of 5 stars because it is phenomenal. It is gorgeous. I love all of the symbolism. If I could have a poster of this cover, I would. It's magnificent. I love it. And if you're worried about what the descriptions for our MCs are, on the cover, they did do them justice. It is beautiful. Osric and Farum are described just the way they look on this cover. It is so well done. I wish we had this more often, or if not, the MCs on the cover, like a little character sheet, like little miniatures of what the author imagined our characters actually looking like. But it is so gorgeous. All right, so 5 out of 5 stars on the cover. Now we're going to get into our synopsis. This book takes place in an alternate universe UK and is written in British English, and we also have the use of Old English throughout the book. Now, the entirety of this slow burn enemies to lovers romance is based around two orders, two groups. There are more groups in the book, they are described, but we focus solely on two of these orders, one of them being the Faerun Order, I hope that's how you say it, or Faerun Order, probably Faerun, and the other being the Halen Order. These orders, under normal circumstances, have absolutely nothing to do with each other because it is illegal for them to interact. However, circumstance and opportunity force them together, and we'll see why as we're going through this review, or of course if you read it. So the Halen Order is light and goodness and the magical healers of this alternate UK universe. As far as healers go, there are normal healers in this book, however, they're limited in what they can achieve. And our other order, the Faerun Order, is an order of assassins. So they're everything dark and disturbing and vicious compared to the Halen Order. So instead of the Faerun Order being called anything other than filthy, the Halen Order, as opposed to them, are pure. So since it's supposed to be illegal for them to interact, this is where things have to take a turn out of normal circumstances for our MCs to come together. So a little bit of the backstory. In this story, we do have a mysterious plague that is affecting only children. And the Halen Order, they wish to create an inoculation to prevent this sickness from striking the remaining children that have not gotten sick yet. However, they need funding, of course. They need money. But every time they apply for, like, I guess we could compare it to grants or whatever you want to call it from government or from higher ups, they are turned down every single time. They can't get approval from anywhere. They can't get the funding that they need. So in waltzes our MMC Osric to try and convince or coerce Farum into helping him fix his little predicament because he has a problem that is affecting his magic. And how he is an assassin, if he doesn't have his magic, then they're going to get rid of him because he is a burden and serves no purpose to them. He goes to Farum instead of to someone else because she has a particular interest and knowledge based in healing practices that were more folklorish than their scientific based research from her, I guess we could compare it to an undergraduate study that could possibly help him. It could save him. So our dear Halen, Alreen Farum, she is firm in her beliefs of right or wrong and would rather die on a hill than help Osric. But before Osric can carry out his plan C, which is to kidnap Farum, in waltzes one of the Halen heads, her name is Xanthi, I think. And she is like an elder Halen. She's been doing this for a while. Farum, of course, respects Xanthi. Now, Halen Xanthi decides, okay, let's listen to what this Farum has to say because it's odd that he's come all this way. He made it this far. He's here being a nuisance. But let's hear what he has to say. And as they're talking, Osric offers his bribe and she decides, all right, you know what, Farum? Sucks to be you, but we're going to accept this. If he goes through and does as we say, then you're stuck with him until either you fix his problem or he dies. And like I said, since they need funding to research and create this inoculation, his bribe was 20 million thrysmas, which is like basically pieces of gold. And the terms were he has to surrender these funds to the Halen Order before the close of business Friday afternoon as an anonymous donation to the Pox Fund. So that's for the plague that's going around. They call it the Pox. So because of this, I am impressed by Halen Xanthi. I would not expect her to accept a bribe like this. However, because of what's going on with the children, so many children are dying, so many children are getting sick, this is incredible dedication to her patients, to the patients that she's taking care of, because right now, because the outbreak is so bad, all of the Halens within the order, they're running themselves ragged, trying to keep up and save these children instead of doing the research that they would normally be doing. They're just running around healing as much as possible, and it is taking a toll on them. Okay, and I know some people, if you watch this review, you might not agree that she made the right judgment call. She shouldn't have accepted the bribe. That's a lack of professionalism, things like that. I'm not condoning taking a bribe, but we are in a fictional magic realm that doesn't actually exist, okay? And if you read the descriptions that we're giving of these sick children, then I want you to go and read those descriptions, how the children are described, and then tell me how you feel about that, or how you would feel if this were real and the children were part of your family, and not knowing, are they going to make it, are they not, and knowing that they are in excruciating pain as children. So what we're seeing here is the failure of a system to protect its citizens, mostly because the children that are suffering right now, they are the poor children. They are the lower end of the socioeconomic scale within this world, this fictional world. Children are children. Rant over. So after this culminating event, the rest of the book is set up as we see Farum and Osric try to work together to find a cure for him. And we just watch how they interact, how they loathe each other, but at the same time, they need each other. And throughout the story, they make their way around to different locations because depending on the location depends on the whole process of the healing. You'll understand if you pick it up and read it. Because it's a trial and error process, they do have disappointing moments, so it's not always, yay, progress. There is no hard evidence on what does truly work, what doesn't work. And that is part of the suspense that keeps you on your toes and makes you want to know more. Is it working? Is it not working? What's going on? Have we figured out a pattern? But we also get to see how between their meetings, they go on about their life as usual through their everyday trials that they're faced with, the difficulties of their jobs, of course, of their lifestyles, and just overall trying not to get caught. And of course, as they begin to finally get along, they're thrust into some precarious situations. But in doing so, they uncover some truths about the pox, where it's coming from, why is it only affecting the socioeconomic lower class, and why the pox has spread so quickly in such little time. By the time we reach the end of the novel, we do want to know who is behind the antagonistic efforts behind the pox, its spread, and of course, if Osric's unconventional treatment is actually working, and what is going to happen between the FMC and MMC. So, something a little bit different than what I normally do. I'm going to read a couple of my favorite quotes to you. All right. So we're going to start with where Osric and Farum are discussing what's going on with Xanthi. No, answered Osric. I am not the Bloody Undertaker. You're interrupting a negotiation session, Gran. So if you wouldn't mind. A negotiation? For what? Xanthi turned to Farum. Did this man just call me Gran? Farum looked, if you please, embarrassed. I'm so sorry. No idea who he is. He's got in somehow. He tried to bribe me for a healing, and now he's threatening kidnap with, honestly, grotesque ineptitude. The wardens will make short work of him. Ask them not to damage him too much, said Xanthi, eyeing Osric as though he were a slab of meat. We could use another corpse in the anatomy lab. We're running low on adult males. Xanthi is a mood. She may be the oldest Halen alive, but she is phenomenal. All right, and now we're going a bit towards the end of the book when they get along a little bit better, but this is another interaction. Alrine pushed past him, admittedly not an easy exercise, and strode around the corner. There she found Scrope, studded with at least 24 stab wounds. Not quite dead, but not quite alive either. What did you do? Gasped Alrine. He fell, said Mordaunt. He fell? Yes, on the fork. He fell on the fork 20 times? Yes, due to fear. What was he afraid of? The fork. God. The humor in this book, I love it. That is why I loved this book so much. And then there is another portion within this story. So Osric isn't all bad. He does adopt stray dogs when he's out on missions, of course, because they'll like come up to him for some reason. I don't understand, but you know, it's cute. The idea in this story is cute, okay? So he has all of these stray dogs at his home, which Aurine eventually goes to because he's having some extra issue with his original issue. It's complicated. It got more complicated over time. And the dogs he has, they are named Rigor Mortis, Arson, Perjury, and Forgery. Would you like to take a gander why? Osric named them after what he was doing at that time. So each dog is named. I'm guessing Rigor Mortis was after somebody that has been for a while. Yeah. And that's just basically what the entire book is like. And as we get further, there is a quote, or rather a scene, about Osric when he's starting to seem to fall more. And it just says, her utter lack of interest killed him. He hated her. And that's it. That's just the whole vibe. So now that we're past me gushing about how much I enjoy this conglomeration of innuendos and dark humor, now we're going to talk a little bit about the magic system. So, the magic system is pretty unique. I like it. It is brilliant and magnificent. It's one of the most unique magic systems that I've seen in a while. And it's incredibly thought out. It's well structured. It has, like, someone took the time, well, the author took the time to go through and think about how they wanted this to function. So, the magic system itself is known as the Safe, and it is a system of channels and nodes that run parallel to the nervous system within the body. And those channels and nodes are known as Safe channels. So when it comes to people that are within orders, whoever has the high standing of having been there studying for years and their dedication to their order, they can receive what is known as a techn. Probably should have looked up pronunciations, but you know what? We're just going to keep reading, which in Old English means sign, symbol, or evidence. And what this ends up being, the tekken itself, is a symbol seared into the palms of full order members. So once they've completed their training, then they get this symbol seared into the center of their palm. It can either be the left hand or the right hand. Which hand it's in does depend on the order itself. And what this does is it gives the owner of this tekken the ability to access their magic more freely and able to manipulate it within the world outside of their body. So it gives them greater magic output and manipulation of said magic. So even though everyone in this world does have the Saith channels and the Saith within their bodies, if they don't have attacking from one of the orders, then that means their abilities to use Saith is very limited, and they can only perform small tasks like use what's known as a waystone to teleport from one location to another within this UK universe. Now, even though Order members have this Tekken, it doesn't mean that their Saith is unlimited, their magic. It's not unlimited, it does have limits to it. Once someone is starting to use up the Saith that they have and are reaching their limits, they begin to present signs or symptoms of some kind of malady. And when this happens, this is known as the cost. So it's what they have to pay in return for using so much of their magic, of their safe. And it's basically a warning and an equilibrium, a homeostasis between the human body and the magic. And it's to keep the owner from overdoing it and pushing themselves past what's safe for them. As of right now in this book, we don't know what happens to someone if they completely use up all of their safe, but the cost is usually painful or inconvenient. So we haven't seen anybody push that far into their safe. And I'll give you a few examples that we have throughout the book of what these costs are for different people. So one of the other Halen that we see, her name is Elodie. Her cost is lockjaw, so that's not too bad, but if it goes on for long enough, then she could starve, or it could cause breathing problems. Another Halen from the hematology department, if they use too much of their safe, then it looks like they have arthritis in both knees, so they like walk very painfully around, just not having a good time. And Aurine's cost is very, very gruesome. I didn't really like how the other Halen's cost didn't seem as bad as Aurine's, because her cost is having chapped hands, but it goes to the point of her hands like getting chapped and then they split open and gets to the point where you can see like her bones. So that seemed a little bit extreme for the healer. And then Osric, his cost is going blind in one eye for a little while. It's not permanent. They do heal from it once their safe is replenished. But every time they go past their limit, they have to experience the pain, the discomfort, the inconvenience of reaching these limits every time. So as we can see, their cost can be mild or it can be severe. Another benefit that order members have because of their tekken is the fact that they have access to what's known as a Dalefall. A Dalefall in this story is what a animal companion is called, but it's not really an animal. It's kind of like a Patronus from Harry Potter because it is made of magic. So I guess we'd say they're more like familiars, like magic familiars. The order members can summon these creatures and they can manifest them. They can take the form and color of what the order member summons, but usually it is just one animal. Once they've got that one, then that is it. There's no changing it. The detail within these Dalefall depends upon the order member's control of their safe. So, for example, Osric's Dalefall is kind of smoky. There's not much detail. There are some details, but the entire thing isn't detailed. Whereas Faram's Dalefall is completely detailed. You can see every hair and every whisker on her Dalefall. So that's a big varying difference between each person's safe control. And usually, what the order members will do with their Dalefall is use them to convey messages between people so they can like touch their tagging together, and then it's like creating a contact for what we would consider contact within our phones. They create a contact with each other and then they can communicate with each other. They can send their Dalefall between each other. And of course, the Dalefall's name, they are typically sacred and only the order member that summons that Dalefall knows their name. Now, other than this, there isn't really anything else I can think of that we would need to go over for the magic system. This does seem to summarize it pretty well, but I did like the how much it was thought out before putting it onto paper. My thoughts and opinions on this book, I thought it was perfection. I loved it. I really can't wait for book two. I am looking forward to picking it up and seeing what happens. But in all seriousness, I do believe I've found a new addition to my Roman Empire shelf along with Throne of Glass. This is going up there with it. And as I've mentioned previously, this is one of my last reads of 2025, but I'm trying to catch up with recording and editing my videos because I have fallen behind and it's been a little hectic trying to get everything to work out. So when it comes to this book, I loved everything from cover design to plot, subplot, the characters, their unique personalities, the way they contrast, the way they fit together, the way everybody interacts. One of my favorite things about the introduction to the MMC and the FMC is just how much their personalities contrast with each other. And especially how it seems that Aurine is, in all actuality, colder than Osric is. And Osric is picky about certain things, and he seems to be he doesn't like his masculinity to be ignored, so he's very vain about himself and in his perception of himself. And Farum does hold herself to the standard of being in the position that she's in, but we do find out that she was forced into being the head of her own department, which she had zero desire for, but she also didn't want someone that she saw as incompetent taking over in her instead of her. Which, of course, I understand that. I wouldn't want someone that seems incompetent to be in charge of everyone else. One of my other favorite things about this book are the witty remarks, the puns, especially the puns. They are so good. The humor, the wittiness throughout it all. It was refreshing to see this type of dark and somewhat crude humor compared to the other things that we've been seeing lately. I think I mentioned this earlier, I'm not sure, I don't really remember, but it was also nice to see the inclusion of the little anatomy tidbits that get thrown in there. That was interesting. I love how the magic system runs parallel to the nervous system because if you really think about it, the nervous system does really just seem like our own personal magic system. And it's not just spaghetti thrown at a wall. When Osric does finally come around and tell us what it was that caused this problem that he's having, it shines a different light upon him. It shines a light on the brutality and what it's like, and of course the cost at what his great dwindling fortune at this point is coming to, because it is more intricate than just him being like, you know what, I want to be a Faerun in Faerun order. I want to people all the time. This is what I want to do. Let's get to it. And the way him and Farum interact at the beginning of the book is very natural. It does seem very natural in itself. And the way they interact, it doesn't feel forced or unnatural. Since they are supposedly natural enemies to begin with, it makes sense the way they interact. And even more so when Osric begins to figure out he's falling for Farum, it's so funny. Because we do get to see how he notices it first through alternating POV. We don't get to see Farum falling or noticing that she's falling for him until much later. And it was just nice to see that happen. And like I said, we do get changing POV, so sometimes it'll be Farum, sometimes it'll be Osric. Now, would I recommend this book to others? Yes, I most definitely would. I would recommend this for anyone who's looking for a juicy, witty, banner-filled, enemies to lovers romantasy. The writing is beautiful and lyrical without being overtly lyrical in itself, so you won't get bored with the descriptions. Everything that is written and said within this book is necessary. It's not like overly descriptive in one thing and then leaves you guessing in another. Farum, of course, is gorgeous, highly intelligent, and knows her boundaries, but is still curious to investigate things. So with this curiosity, she does look at life a little bit differently than the rest of the Halen Order. And Osric is the opposite of that. He's witty, he's funny, not nearly as inquisitive as Farum is. Definitely twice as vain, which of course is kind of funny in and of itself. And the burn is slow, but it's not as bad as another book that I read, which would have been Shield of Sparrows. The tension is much sooner in this book, and it definitely leaves us wanting more of this cute, budding romantasy. So, since I'm done gushing about how much I love Osric and Farum, If you enjoy romantasy, enemies to lovers, forced proximity, sass, wit, banner, I'd say probably Sunshine and Grumpy, characters, quirky assassins, and magical medicine, then this is the book for you. There is no actual smut between characters, so you don't have to worry about that. Like I said previously, there are sexual innuendos, so just keep that in mind. And there are some other scenes that involve other characters. Nothing that I would consider smut, but it is like it's a little out there. We do go to the pleasure district to investigate something in this book. Now, if there are things that you try to avoid, I would definitely check out the trigger warnings. I would warn against there's some gore, there's anatomical speak, so we get anatomical terms, things like that, human body functions. Assassin and healer, what do you expect? And like I said, this is an alternate UK setting, so this book is written in British English with some Old English terms thrown in there. And those are the only things I would really recommend that you just take a look at to make sure it is something that you want to read. I would definitely recommend it though. Will I read the next book? Yes, absolutely. I am looking forward to the next book so much. It is set to be released July 7th, 2026 this year. Yay! Considering pre-ordering right now, I'm not sure. I don't know if I like the idea like pre-ordering or not. Tempted. I really like this book, but we are still a ways out, so I might wait a little while longer before I do that. I just need to know what happens to Osric. I need to know what happens to the relationship between him and Ferrum. I need to know, does he get better? Does he not? Does he run from his order? Does he face his order? Does he take over the order? What happens with all of these sick kids? And what's going on with this plot against the lower socioeconomic class? Like, why are you going after the children? So these are all of the things that are just going like through my brain constantly, and I just can't get it out of my head, and I can't wait until the next book comes out. Do I have any similar books to this that I've read recently in questions of like enemies to lovers romantasy that focuses on assassin and healer? Not really. The only thing that I would say is magic and medicine, but that's more like a shifter romantasy with a healer, of course. She's a doctor. But the vibes are very different than the irresistible urge to fall for your enemy. And if you've made it this far, everyone, it has been a pleasure having you here today. I hope to see you back next time when we go over our next book, whatever that might be. And I hope you enjoyed this review talking about this beautiful book, The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Bridget Knightley. If you would like to see more things like this, going over more romantasy fantasy books, then please hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye!